Hello, my name is Elka Edwards. I am the founder and the creative director of Ivy House. So we have just 10 minutes together today, and in that time, we are going to look at ownership. Specifically, taking 100% ownership for who you are and how you lead. So I'm going to kick off the session with a couple of questions. Grab a paper, grab a pen, and I want you to just jot down a few words that answer these first two questions. So my first question is, what behaviors are you consistently choosing at work right now? I want you to imagine that I'm talking to your colleagues, you are nowhere around, you can't hear them. What behaviors would they say that you are choosing consistently? Now, the second part of the question, or the second question, I guess, is what behaviors are you choosing at home right now? So again, I'm in your home, I'm talking to the people that you live with. What behaviors would they tell me that they are experiencing from you? So why am I asking you these questions? Well, there's two reasons. Firstly, starting to recognize the behaviors that we choose on a consistent basis, and then beginning to recognize that we have some choice over those behaviors is key to determining who we become and how we show up as leaders. So my aim in our 10 minutes together today is to really be a catalyst, I guess, for your thinking. And to do that, I'm going to cover three key things. I'm going to cover the extraordinary equation, the ownership decision, and a very important question as to whether or not you are above or below the line. Let's kick off with the extraordinary equation. Now this, I've got to tell you, I think is the most important equation. You may well have done maths or physics at school, but I think this is the most important equation that you are ever going to learn. And it is E plus B equals R. So if we were talking live, I would ask you, what does this stand for? But I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give you the answer. It stands for event plus behavior equals result. And let me explain what that means. Life is just a series of events. It rains, you miss the bus, you get given a lot of work that you have no time to do, you get furloughed, your partner is in a foul mood, your job perhaps is put at risk, COVID-19 puts us all in lockdown and turns the world on its head. All of these events, we have very, very little, if not any, control of them. And that's really important. We have to recognize that life happens one event after the other. But the thing we do have control over is how we respond to each of those events. So again, my bus is late. I can get in a really bad mood, or I can just accept that my bus is late and take the action I need to do to let people know that I might be late to the meeting. So no matter what happens in life, I have a choice about how I respond to every single event that goes on. Now, that makes sense logically, doesn't it? But actually, that's not really how most of us lead our lives. Because I have another question for you. How often have you blamed something or someone else for how you're behaving? Now, I mean, for example, have these words ever come out of your mouth? Oh, you make me so angry. Well, or of course I'm overwhelmed. Have you seen the amount of work I've got to do? Or of course I'm stressed. Do you know what's going on over here? Now, I can't deny the joy of blaming something or someone else outside of me for how I'm feeling. But in doing that, actually what's happening is we are giving away our ultimate power. Because choosing our behavior is the power of being human. And when we go back to our equation, E plus B equals R, it is that magic part of the equation that allows us to affect the result. Every single time something happens on a moment by moment basis, we get to choose our behavior. So for example, if we feel that business processes are standing in the way of us or our team members or the people that work with us doing our job well, then are we choosing to say something or not? if we believe that, you know what, the people that work for us aren't empowered to do their job well, are we doing something, saying something, or not? I'll give you another example. A member of your team isn't delivering on what they said they would deliver. They're not meeting the timeframes. They're not holding themselves to account. Do you do that well? Do you have the conversation that needs to be had or not? So all of these events, as we are in business, are happening one after the other. The only thing, but the most important thing that we have in our armory, I guess, is this choice about how we respond from a behavioral point of view to any event that hits us. So recognizing that we have a choice and recognizing that it's that behavior that we can choose that will make all the difference is crucial when we start to look at leadership. I mean, quite frankly, it's crucial when we start to look at our lives in every aspect, but specifically today in leadership. There's another reason it matters so much, is because the magic ingredient of any relationship is behavior. If I was in a relationship with you right now, the only way you would know me was because of the behavior that I use in our relationship. The only way I know you is because of the behavior you choose to bring to the space between us in our relationship. And ultimately, of course, leadership is one relationship after the other. Think of the relationships you have within your team right now. What behavior are you putting into the space between you and your team members? Now, the reason I talk about this so passionately, I guess, is because the moment we get this recognition that we can choose our behavior, we actually get to stand in our full power as an individual and as a leader. So I want you to just ask yourself the question, if I were to go and give everybody in your team a truth pill, what would they tell me about the behaviors that they experience from you on a regular basis? So that's the first part of our conversation today, the extraordinary equation. The second part then is the ownership decision. Because yes, of course, it's true that we have 100% ownership for the behavior we choose in response. Do we actually choose to activate that ownership? Do we really take responsibility for that? And to do that, I wanted to share with you what we call at Ivy House the ownership ladder. And I want you to just have a think about where you sit on the ownership ladder. So at the bottom, we have what we call cows. They follow the herd, they keep their head down, they avoid dealing with conflict and what's going on. They say things like, well, it's not my fault, I didn't know, it's out of my hands. They blame the situation, they make excuses, and they sort of wait and hope that change is going to happen. At the top of the ladder, we have what we call rhinos. And these are people that acknowledge reality. They say, we have an issue in this business where we're working in silos, we're not communicating, there's too much hierarchy, there's too much process, people aren't making decisions quick enough, whatever it is for you. They acknowledge reality, they own it, they find solutions, and they make things happen. So the question is not whether or not we have ownership for our behavior. The question is whether or not we are taking full responsibility for making things happen. So that's the second part of what I wanted to talk about in terms of taking 100% ownership for who you are, how you show up, and the leader you become. And it's worth, before we move on, just understanding or reflecting on where you might be on that ownership ladder. And the third thing I wanted to cover, there are countless ways of how we can take ownership for our behavior in business and therefore affect the results that we get in our business or in our lives. And I wanted to end by using just one specific example, which I think has had the most transformational effect in pretty much any business I've ever worked on. And it is this question: are you above or below the line? Now, to answer that question, let me explain what I mean by this. This line is an absolutely crucial tool for you to use in understanding how to create change in your business. When you're above the line, you're motivated by learning. And when you're below the line, you're motivated by being right. Now, when you see it this way, of course I'm motivated by learning. You know, I'm always open. But I'm going to take you back to just the latest meeting you've been to, or maybe a conversation that didn't go so well for you. I'm going to ask you to be really honest, because there's nobody there with you now, so you can just be honest to yourself and ask yourself, in that conversation, was I motivated by being right and winning, or was I completely open to what the other people had to say? Because when we're motivated by learning, we show certain behaviors, we choose certain behaviors, we choose to share information, we share our thoughts and our feelings. We genuinely listen. I mean, genuinely listen. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's imagine you and your partner are arguing about where you're going to go on holiday, and you want to go to Africa and they want to go to Spain. And they're telling you all the reasons why they want to go to Spain. Are you really listening to their reasons? Or are you formulating your argument so that when they stop speaking, you can actually trump them with what you want to say and win that argument? Now, if we are going to change behaviors and cultures within our organizations, we have to be okay with not being right. We have to be okay with not winning the debate. We have to be okay with changing our minds. We have to say things like, wow, I've never thought about it that way, but that's a brilliant idea. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to the table. And in my experience, having worked for over 20 years now with senior leaders, this is where the rubber hits the ground. Are you able in your conversations to sit there and sit on the same side of the table, look at the problem over there, and together find solutions? And it doesn't matter where the ideas come from. In my experience, most leadership teams spend over 90% of their time being motivated by being right and winning in the conversation. Now, they do that in all sorts of different ways. They do that by being politically correct. They do that by sitting back and letting everybody do the talking and then coming in with their summary and their conclusion. Leaders always say to me, well, I have to encourage people to speak. And I go, no, you have to have a dialogue, an honest, humane dialogue with people. And that means you taking part and not holding back your ideas. So that's the final piece of what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I guess, therefore, my final question for you today is, are you prepared to do what it takes to create real change? Because in reality, it means leaving your ego at the door. It means being genuinely curious and open and prepared to listen, to recognize that actually just because we've always done things a certain way, or your experience has told you it should be done that way. Are you prepared as a team and as an individual to take full ownership for what's not working in your organization right now, and actually let go of fighting the battles, but just find the right way forward? That's it from me. I wanted to thank you for your time, and hopefully I'll see you soon.